at Castlewood Canyon, one of the three things, other than doing the Cherry Creek Trail, that I immensely enjoyed was I took and put together two historical trail ride trips with 26 horseback riders from one end of Douglas County to the other. And in doing that, it was to teach these people the history as we rode along, which I was fascinated with, going back to 1865 in Douglas County. And I took them across the county and showed them all these historical points. Well, the neatest thing about everything was I was out scouting this trail, trying to put this through. And that's why we came to Castlewood Canyon today, is because a week before the ride, I was scouting right behind me, the south end of Castlewood Canyon State Park, and where you can see the cliffs and the hills going up. I was riding back with a friend, and we were climbing those far cliffs there with our horses when a terrible prairie thunderstorm hit. And at that moment, the rain started coming, and we were being chased by lightning, just like the songs sing about and everything. And as we got on top of that plateau, we had the yellow slickers on and had the cowboy hats on, and we were riding as fast as any horse would go. And my favorite horse, Wrangler, and I were just going straight towards Highway 83 over there, fast as we could run, trying not to slip, crossed the highway, and rode down into one of the most historical barn areas of Prairie Canyon Ranch, rode right into the barn, and stayed there till nightfall. And the storm left us and everything. And after leaving, we still had a few miles to my home, which was on the east side of Douglas County in the most beautiful treat area next to Russellville. And at 8 o'clock that night, we headed out in just the moonlight, giving us directions, and of course using the horses and their senses, and rode through the most beautiful full moon night through the pine trees and everything. This was one of my experiences that I'll never forget. I think the thing that I want to let everybody know is in the enjoyment of life and kind of crossing the edge and having that ride that day through the thunder and the lightning, and how you can relate to the songs then that sing about a horse in full gallop, or looking at the beautiful Western paintings, is to go ahead and do everything you can to enjoy what you can in life. And to me, doing these things, and this was something I was trying to do for others in the county and teaching history, as I did the Cherry Creek Trail, and also in Parker doing the 20-mile house renovation after purchasing that with a partner and dedicating it to the town of Parker. And then I want to show you something about this area that we call the Living Will Park, which is famous history in Parker. And in putting that park together, it was so much fun to do, not only for today, but as I reflected being in the park, and I brought in special stones that were huge, that showed the strength of the pioneers. It was for the people of yesteryear, for people of today, and now the people in the community of Parker get to see it too. So I just wanted to take a moment and show you this beautiful canyon and tell you about that trail ride. That was one of the moments I will never forget, of scouting the trail and going through that storm, surviving it, and then actually at the end, just like many things in life, you survive it, but then you actually enjoy it and never forget it. That you can do anything you want to do, and only you can hold yourself back. But the open spaces, the beauty of Douglas County, being outdoors, has meant so much to me. I can't even describe, and that's why I did participate. And in more than anything in participation, the Cherry Creek Trail, when I saw that valley start to disappear, and in that valley disappearing, I mean with development that was expected, it was that, can we still maintain, though, not only for me to have an epiphany, but for all of you to walk that trail, and the next generation of your kids and the next kids, is what can we do to preserve the feeling I had, and those who came before me that owned the beautiful ranches there, that made me want to go out and acquire the trail right away for the Douglas County organization of open space and trails, parks, and in working for them for 18 years. It was a labor of love. It was something now that everybody says, oh my gosh, we're so happy that somebody thought ahead of time to preserve that basin, that beautiful open space, for us to recreate and actually see what, the pioneers 100 years ago saw. That will be preserved forever.
congratulations. And I have here basically his resume, his background of what Mr. Niewoehner, his dedication to this town. But it just basically says kind of what he's done, but not who he is. And if I could take this opportunity to just simply quote a couple of things from one of my favorite people, Mr. Vince Lombardi. I think it pertains to Dennis Niewoehner, the kind of person that he is. And Vince Lombardi said, unless a man believes in himself and makes a total commitment to his career and puts everything he has into it, his mind, his body, his heart, what is his life worth to him? Well, Mr. Niewoehner has done that to this community since I've been here since 1988. Dennis has been here a lot longer than I have. The town of Parker came to be because of somebody like Dennis Niewoehner and his dedication, not only of land to the town of Parker to get it started, but also of his time, his dedication, his efforts, the love of this community that he has. And you'll see that tonight as he continues forward with the dedication of another 38 acres to this town and its improvements. Also, Vince Lombardi said that the quality of man's life has got to be a full measure of that man's personal commitment to excellence. If I could say anything again about Dennis Niewoehner, it is that he is truly a man of excellence. Everything he does breeds excellence. He wants to make sure that what he does with his town is in an excellent form. And finally, I will leave it with St. Francis of Assisi, who said, "It is no use walking anywhere to preach unless our walking is our preaching." Dennis Niewoehner walks the walk, talks the talk. And you'll see it as you go through this entire town. You'll see the contributions he's made. He's been named Citizen of the Year at PEDC, Cornerstone Award winner. The man is just one giving individual. And I thank him tonight from the bottom of my heart. And I know I'm speaking for council, Mr. Niewoehner, when I say thank you. Thank you for this dedication of 38 acres. I know how this is important to you, but this 38 acres is going to be a great enhancement to this community for years and years and years and years and years to come. Thank you with all my heart. At this time, I'd like to have Debbie Lewis say a few words on behalf of Mr. Dennis Niewoehner. Debbie?
Actually, I'm going to read an excerpt from a letter. There are few people who hold that man in development must ever live in conflict with nature, that there is no way for the two to live peaceably together and for both to flourish. Dennis Niewoehner proves the opposite, although I don't think he necessarily set out to prove anything. It has been Dennis's commitment to community and abiding affection for the Colorado countryside which have motivated him to help preserve the wild and rural splendor for the greater enrichment of all of Parker's citizens. The Cherry Creek Trail System is a living gift to all of us, and like all true gifts, it was given without cost. The other contributions Dennis has made are too numerous to list here. I salute Dennis as my good friend and congratulate him on this well-deserved recognition. This is signed sincerely yours, Jim Nicholson, who is a cabinet member in President Bush's cabinet.
Congratulations, Jim. Dennis, thank you again. Thank you, Debbie. With that, now I'll bring up Mr. Dennis Trapp, Parks and Recreation, to show us the dedication.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Those were very kind words and very accurate words. What I would like to do tonight is just talk real briefly about some of Dennis's involvement with parks, trails, and open space over the last 15 to 20 years here in the town of Parker. And Dennis is a man that's always had a vision, and he's always looked at what Parker could be. And he has spent a fair amount of his time, free time, coming to evening meetings, coming to council meetings, working with staff, working with council, working with homeowners associations, to bring that dream and to bring that vision to a reality. And he's been able to do that. Whether it's trail projects in the town or in the county, whether it's open space purchases in the town or in the county, construction of parks, he has always been there when we've needed some assistance. And one of the things that Dennis and I share, besides that's the same first name, is a passion for history. And one of the things I noticed right out of the blocks 10 years ago when I started working with Dennis was his passion for local history. And I'm sure he'll admit that, and we might even talk about it a little bit tonight. And he takes that history, that knowledge, and he integrates that into his projects that he works on, whether it's a trail, whether it's an open space acquisition, or whether it's a park. And I think the town is much better off for it. And I am very, very proud to say I've had Dennis as a friend.
I'll give you a little background about this Dennis Niewoehner guy. He definitely walks it, there's no doubt, and I appreciate your comments, Mayor. When I came to the county in 1989, one of the first people that I ran into was former Mayor Ann Waterman. And Ann was so busy at that time working on the 8 miles of the Parker section of the Cherry Creek Regional Trail. And she introduced me to Joe and Jeff Shoemaker. Joe and Jeff Shoemaker are the originators of the Greenway, the Platte River Greenway that we all know that runs through Denver and runs out into the Carter Greenway out into Littleton. And their dream was to take a 24-mile trail from Cherry Creek State Park on the north to Castlewood Canyon State Park on the south. And of that 24 miles, 5 is in Arapahoe County, and that's divided up between Arapahoe County and the city of Aurora and Cherry Creek State Park. And the other 19 miles are south in Douglas County. That's divided up into 8 miles in the town of Parker and 11 miles in unincorporated Douglas County. So the first thing that Joe and Jeff and Ann said, you've got to meet this guy, Dennis Niewoehner. He's a dynamo, and he has went out and actually negotiated either right-of-way or easement for our trail sections in Parker. So I placed a call to Dennis, and we've been best friends for 16 years. And in our 11 miles of the county, I'm just really proud to tell you that we never paid one dime for 11 miles of trail right-of-way or easement. We never bought a single inch of trail. That's an accomplishment right there. And we owe that to Dennis. We had many, and I know we're short on time, so I won't really go any farther, but I just honor Dennis and honor Marcia as my friends, not just my colleagues. I hope that he said he's going to slow down, but I know we'll be calling on him, and we'll be taking advantage of his expertise. But the last thing I had, and I'm going to actually pass out, we have a brand new guide to recreation. I want to give one to each of the council and to your acting manager. And I wanted to tell you, Dennis is a guy, and he did this a number of times. In the morning, he'd have on a very nice looking suit, and he'd be downtown working on a piece of property with attorneys, etc. In the afternoon, he'd go home, he'd put on his cowboy boots, his jeans, his flannel shirt, and he'd go out to a 4th generation rancher. You got to remember, way down the south end of the county, we got a lot of ranchers that have been there a long time, and would sit there and have coffee and listen to the same story 8 or 10 times from the gentleman, the rancher, and every time he got us either the right of way or the easement. And I just so honor, and we need more people in this world like Dennis Niewoehner. Congratulations, Dennis.
I don't think I've ever worked with anybody any more honest, competent, or ethical than what Dennis has been. Not only did we work on all the Cherry Creek Trail easements, but he's also helped us a great deal with a lot of our open space acquisitions and putting us in contact with landowners. So we certainly feel it's a privilege to have worked with Dennis, and we look forward to a continued association in one capacity or another. Thank you very much, Dennis.
I'm speechless, but if I say I'm speechless, I need all of you to raise your hand if you've ever seen me speechless. But I'm humbled. I came here tonight to give to you, and everybody's given to me. There's a term that I heard a while back that in certain mentoring sessions with young people I've used. It's altruistic egoism. And those are contradiction words. And what it is, and I discovered this on the Trail of Life, not just the Cherry Creek Trail. Years ago, when this started with Mayor Ann Waterman and I started working with Ron, the first 1 foot of Cherry Creek Trail ever poured was on this piece of property that, with the grace of God, I'm able to give to the community, 38 acres tonight, and as a young man, I never thought I'd be in that position to do that. So this donation means a lot to me, and that it's not only for the community, but that first 1 foot of trail started everything of all the trail recreation that we've seen grow throughout the state of Colorado. We were on the cutting edge. Parker was the beginning of it. And the Cherry Creek Trail was renowned, and it all started right there on this piece of property. So now as a older statesman, I'm in a position to actually deed this property over to the community. And the community is the people. It's us tonight, and it's the children that are home tonight. And when I first had the opportunity to be in Douglas County and Parker, we're talking 1972, I rode down Highway 83 and I looked over to the west and I saw all the sod farms, I saw the hay meadows, I saw beauty. That was an epiphany for me that really opened up my life. It made this work that I've done for this community is given back to me under that term, and is given to me where I was just trying to give to the community. I think I won. But the major thing that I wanted to do, and that I feel accomplished tonight, and with this donation and with my partner's involvement, who's always given to Parker too, Jeff Johnston, what this has done is, and what you guys do every week, is you're doing it for the community now, but knowing most of you and your involvement and how much you give to the community, people, and this may be the example of it. I said when I saw this beauty of the Cherry Creek Valley, I wanted to make sure others after me saw it, and I knew development would be coming. It was coming then, but not like rampant lately. But I said if we could save that floodplain channel and make it recreational in the beauty and the trees and just how it reaches and touches our heart, that means that with what you do and what I did, we could save that for those youngsters, save it for the next crew, and it's turned out that way. So I too congratulate you and all your efforts in the beginning of the Cherry Creek Trail right here in Parker. And thank you very much tonight for all the nice comments. And with this donation, we just feel very proud that this will be saved forever too. And that area south of the Main Street Bridge, just so the audience knows, they've all traveled over that bridge and have seen all the cottonwood trees through there, which represents this 38 acres. And in December, we gave 6 more acres for the trail. This, in my mind, is just one of the prettiest pieces that I've always admired in the heart of the town of Parker. So thank you for your comments tonight, and we're just so glad that we can do this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My last 20 years has really been spent professionally being a developer in the town of Parker. Actually, it started the night the town of Parker incorporated. And with my belief in this little town and watching it grow, I've stayed here ever since, living here, officing here, assisting the community, the town. But where I'm sitting right now is an area called the Living Wheel Park. And at the beginning of developing a hayfield area that was owned by the Clark family that had the 20-mile house sitting on it from the 1860s, we picked up and purchased 48 acres in this area along Main Street. And Main Street is to my left, and it's the old area of Parker, and we developed from there, going westerly, 48 acres to include such things as condominium projects, apartment buildings. We've got retail, we've got restaurants. One of the areas that I started off with in developing this hay meadow, and there was no street other than Main Street, called West Parker Road, and so we built all the other roads in, of Dransfeld Road, 20-mile road, Stage Run. My first building and sale was the U.S. Post Office. And from there in this project, and like I said, it's been running about 10 years, and in addition to building parks and helping on trails and everything, my profession has really been a commercial broker and a developer in the town of Parker. After the post office, one of the major buildings I was so proud of to be a part of and the community needed is the 20-mile 10-screen theater. And that's in 20 Mile Village at this time. And we then brought in a lot of shopping, retail, restaurants. I feel that the combination of positive growth of items for the public, of where to shop, where to recreate, we also then combined in, though, and it was a belief of mine and my partners and I, developed this 1-acre park. This park is called the Living Wheel Park because this big rock I'm sitting on, we brought that in for a purpose to recognize the pioneer spirit. The pioneer spirit was so strong, and a lot of that tenacity and perseverance and persistence is not there anymore. And to work with the kids today, matter of fact, I have read Story Hour here, where I've got the library next door, and I opened up the whole library complex to be part of this park. But the stone indicates the strength of the pioneers and what they put up with. Let me tell you a little bit about where we're actually sitting, not my 10 years of development in the park that's been created, but if you see that stagecoach that's behind me right now, we had an artist out of Idaho named Ralph Crawford sculpt that and bring it to Parker from Idaho. It's made out of marble dust and resin, matter of fact. And this is the exact location where I'm sitting, where the big stagecoach from Kansas, it was the Butterfield line that pulled in here. And we're talking around 1865 to 70, into the 70s, to see that 6-horse hitch on a Butterfield stage pull in. And this was called the 20-Mile House, and the park that's adjacent to this one is the 20-Mile Park because it was 20 miles from old downtown Denver. And the stages had all these stops on the way. The next house up the road from here was the 17-Mile House. In Cherry Creek is the 4-Mile House. And matter of fact, at this area right here where the stage pulled in, it picked up famous people such as Buffalo Bill's mother stayed at the 20-Mile House here and rode in on the stage with Mrs. Tallman and some of the other pioneers. So I'm really sitting on a history area that makes my tenure look very contemporary. The Living Wheel Park then, where there's water beneath me, came forth with the name in that generations live on. So even though the stone is strong and everything, the water indicates life in the next generations. So we tried to, again, with this park, provide for each generation, not just the ones that were here at the first day Parker was starting to develop, but the families that move in and their children and their children's children to experience and learn this history. So we're looking at an area that I spent the last 10 years developing 48 acres, bringing in the commercial, but at the same time being sensitive to the 20-Mile House, the stage stop here where the Denver and New Orleans Railroad ran through, and next to the public library. So I feel the combination of growth and sensitivity to the environment is something that we can do now, we can do in the future, and it must be adhered to because history is so important, as is the preservation of the natural terrain. I wanted to mention just as a finale that when I talk about building this park with my partners, the Living Wheel Park, it's not my park anymore. It's the public's park. What we did is we dedicated this to the people of Parker. And the same goes with that sculpture. Very valuable, very beautiful sculpture, but we brought it in and we dedicated it to the town of Parker for the people to enjoy. In addition to this land of dedicating to the town of Parker, the 20-Mile House itself, the original 20-Mile House, that half acre of property, my partners and I gave that to the town of Parker, and I personally then helped on the renovation of it to make it what it is today by volunteering to do the earthwork, drive the Bobcat. Matter of fact, before that, where we owned the actual 20-Mile House, the old barn, I spent one whole summer tearing down all the old corrals and the old barn, and we preserved all the wood for that 20-mile horse barn for the stagecoaches to be put up in another area of Parker. Other projects that I've done that I'm quite proud of in Parker is I was very instrumental, and I say this because I was so pleased, and the statement goes, a town is not a town until it has a hospital. I was very involved, and I now sit on the board of directors of the Parker Adventist Hospital. My involvement and what I've always done as a businessman is to solve problems. Business is about solving problems. It's not easy, and he who can solve those problems is usually the winner. And we had a situation where the CEO of Centura was ready to close on the property to bring the hospital to Parker. And at the last minute, he said, "Oh, I don't think we can do that because the state of Colorado hasn't granted a direct access permit off the E470 ramp to come right into the Crown Point subdivision, and the hospital will not go with another indirect route." At that point, I knew that I had to do something to make this hospital closing occur. I then, with political contacts, I immediately, where very high up the ladder is the commissioner of the Colorado Department of Transportation, he had already said no. But I went on to Senator Evans and past Senator Evans to Governor Owens and got this in front of them of how we could, with safety control, make that direct access in for the hospital. And within 10 days, I believe it was within a week, we got that granted by the governor's office. One of my first things in Parker to do, and this was really great because my brother worked with me and he was the contractor that built the buildings, and my dad, who worked with me for years and years, driving over every day from Castle Rock, my dad was part of our team too, and we built a complex called Parker Plaza. And at Parker Plaza, it was one of the first shopping centers, modern shopping centers in Parker, and we built 3 retail buildings, and when we finished those, the subsequent 2 years after that, we built 2 of the newest office buildings in town. So I was very proud of that center, given the beginning, let's say, where Parker now at over almost 40,000 people, and having all the big retailers in from Walmart to Home Depot. It was very, very thrilling to be in on the ground floor to get the first commercial buildings in. This little building here is the historic 20 Mile House. I should say it's what remains of the original 20 Mile House. Let me take you back a little. When I said 10 years ago we bought this property, this is part of the property we did purchase for 20 Mile Village, and in purchasing it, attached to this building was a house built in 1948 or 52, an old stucco house, and we tore that all down, and at that time, this little building was the 2-car garage attached to that house. So since historians knew, and with the lumber, the timber in it and everything, that that's the only remaining part of the original 20 Mile House, we saved it. And in saving it, I say the Landmarks Commission of the town of Parker, and myself and some volunteers came in, and after we demolished the other house, built this back to almost its original condition, looking at old photographs. The 20 Mile House, where all the stagecoach travelers stayed overnight, started off, matter of fact, a little building about this size, was south of the town of Parker up in the Pines, and a guy named Alfred Butters had it as his little homestead cabin, and it was used as the U.S. Post Office. And since that wasn't where the stagecoach came through, it came through where Sulphur Gulch is to my left here. He moved it down here, and it was the first post office in Parker. It was owned by a number of people: Nelson Dowd, George Long. Matter of fact, Nelson Dowd bought it by trading for a beautiful team of horses. So a number of families lived here, and finally, James Sample Parker, upon his arrival, bought this entire ranch and ran the 20 Mile House. And at that time, Parker was known as Pine Grove. And because the U.S. Postal System wanted a different name, they had one in Nebraska. He submitted the name of his daughter, Edith, and wanted it to become Edithville. And they didn't like that name whatsoever. I don't blame them. And they said, name it Parker's. And so he submitted back for the U.S. Postal System, Town of Parker. And from that point on, until it was incorporated, the area was called Parker, and then in 1982, officially became the town of Parker. The renovation of this little house with the original woods in it, and the floorboards and everything, tells a story along with the Living Will Park, taking us back in time to respect the history of an area. I think this again shows that the developers respect the history of an area. They actually improve and help the history of the area. So one of the other proud items that I told you about, besides earlier today telling you about where I love the horse trail rides across Douglas County. Out of the three things besides the Cherry Creek Trail, the Living Wheel Park, renovating the 20 Mile House are two more of my favorite things that I've done during my tenure in the town of Parker. And when I say my tenure, I'm at a point right now from when I first started talking to you that I'm kind of winding down my career. I hope to do more for the community in the future, whether it be at Parker level or state level, because I think really for all of us to do and give is how we get rewarded back. To wrap up, I think you're thinking, geez, Dennis speaks a lot about history, of telling about everything, but we know him as a guy that lives for today, loves today. Why did he spend so much time on history? Well, I think myself and so many of the original Parker people, and I say Parker people, we who incorporated the town, got everything rolling for the community as it is today. History was so important to us because it was something we could reflect on, and the people that we could reflect on to see if we could be nearly even half the people they were of their strength and tenacity. And we felt it was very important to convey these messages on. And how do you convey those messages on better than actually through the public parks, the historical buildings, let people read about it, and for us to promote it. But history is a very important element to the town of Parker. It's been a very important part of my life. I've learned so much by studying those who came before me and how they developed the Wild Wild West. And as you can see, this is one of the things I've loved in my whole life more than anything, is the Wild Wild West. I loved it as a little boy, wanted to be a cowboy. But then the Wild Wild West, when I got here, meant something new to me. It meant entrepreneurship. It meant doing what you want to do to reach the levels of the goals in life that you really want to achieve. And that's what history teaches, is that it's available for those who are strong, have perseverance, and want to reach a level that others don't think can be achieved.